Part 1. I used to think life had a pretty predictable rhythm. Wake up, work, come home to my wife, Olivia, and our 8-year-old daughter, Lily. It was a life I'd carved out for myself through sweat, sacrifice, and stubbornness. I ran a small construction company, something I built from scratch with more blisters than blessings. It kept me busy, sure, but I made sure to be present for Lily's school recitals, her birthdays, all the little moments that mattered. Olivia and I had been married for 10 years. We met through my brother, Ethan, who had always been my best friend. We were the kind of brothers who would sneak beers together during family gatherings, tease each other mercilessly, but always have each other's backs. I introduced Ethan to Olivia when she and I first started dating, and they hit it off immediately. Ethan had this effortless charm about him, a charisma that made people feel like they were the center of the universe when he spoke to them. The three of us spent countless weekends together, barbecuing in the backyard, laughing over drinks. Olivia would joke about how Ethan was the brother she wished she'd had instead of her own pain-in-the-ass siblings. And Ethan? He treated her like the sister he never had. Life felt damn near perfect. Sure, Olivia and I had our rough patches. We both had stubborn streaks longer than the Mississippi River, but we worked through them. Or at least I thought we did. Things started feeling off a few months ago. Olivia had always been passionate, affectionate, the kind of woman who would pull me into a kiss just because I'd walked into the room. But that spark? It started to feel more like a flicker. It was the little things at first. She'd cancel our date nights because she was too tired or had some work emergency that couldn't wait. She'd text on her phone more often, her screen tilted away from me like she was guarding government secrets. But whenever I asked her about it, she'd brush me off with a laugh and a kiss on the cheek. You're being paranoid, babe. Nothing's going on. But something was going on. I could feel it in my gut. One night, I came home late from a job site. Dusty, sweaty, and desperate for a shower. The house was quiet. Lily was already asleep. Olivia's car was in the driveway, but she wasn't in bed. I found her in the kitchen, whispering into her phone. When she noticed me, she hung up so fast you'd think the thing was on fire. Who was that? I asked, trying to keep my voice calm, steady. Just work stuff, she said, too quickly. I was dealing with some emails. At midnight. She shrugged, her eyes not quite meeting mine. Deadlines. You know how it is. But I didn't. Olivia worked as a graphic designer from home. Her schedule was always flexible. Midnight deadlines were as believable as me giving up whiskey. A couple of nights later, I caught her texting someone. Her phone clutched so tightly her knuckles were white. When I asked her about it, she said it was just her sister venting about her divorce. The excuse was flimsy, but I let it go. Not because I believed her, but because I wanted to. I started finding excuses to come home early. Random lunch breaks, surprise visits when she wasn't expecting me. Every time, Olivia would be at her desk, headphones on, working away like nothing was wrong. I almost convinced myself I was just being paranoid. Maybe the stress from work was screwing with my head. Then Ethan started acting weird. My brother, who was usually so laid back he was practically horizontal, became jumpy whenever Olivia's name came up. If we were all hanging out, he'd make some excuse to leave early, like he had somewhere better to be. The final straw came on a Friday night. Ethan was supposed to come over for beers and the game, but he canceled last minute, saying he was swamped with work. I shrugged it off and cracked open a beer alone. An hour later, I realized I left my charger at the shop. I drove over to grab it and decided to swing by Ethan's apartment on the way home. His car wasn't there, but Olivia's was. I stared at her car like it had slapped me in the face. My chest tightened, my breathing shallow. But I couldn't jump to conclusions. Maybe she'd broken down or something. Maybe Ethan was just helping her out. But then I saw them, walking out of his apartment, laughing, her hand on his arm like they were on a goddamn date. They didn't see me. I don't even know how long I sat there, my mind spinning like a tornado. But something inside me broke that night. Whatever doubts I'd been holding on to crumbled like ash. I drove home, my knuckles white against the steering wheel. The suspicion wasn't just suspicion anymore. It was a truth I wasn't ready to face. But I was going to, one way or another. Part 2. Driving home that night felt like pushing a car uphill with a broken leg. My mind wouldn't settle. Thoughts clashed and tangled until they were nothing but static. Olivia was cheating on me. With Ethan, the brother I'd trusted with my life. The next morning, I woke up with a throbbing headache and a newfound determination. If she was betraying me, I needed proof. Cold, undeniable proof. I spent the next few days watching her like a hawk. I kept things casual, tried not to act different. If she suspected I was onto her, she'd just get better at hiding things. And I wasn't going to make this easy for her. The phone was the first thing I checked. She guarded it like it held nuclear codes. Always tucked away, face down, set to vibrate instead of ring. I made a mental note of her passcode when she unlocked it one night, Lily's birthday, of all things. The audacity made my blood boil. Once Olivia fell asleep, I slipped her phone off the nightstand, careful not to wake her. I stepped into the hallway, locking myself in the guest bathroom. My hand shook as I navigated her messages, her apps, her emails. Most of it was clean. Mundane conversations with coworkers, emails about freelance projects, texts from her mom. But then I found it. A hidden messaging app, one I'd never seen her use before. The name was generic, something like Work Chat, but it had no business being on her phone. I opened it, and there they were. Conversations with Ethan. Late-night messages filled with inside jokes, flirtations, plans to meet up. One message, in particular, made me feel like someone had poured gasoline down my throat and lit a match. Last night was amazing, Ethan had written. I can't stop thinking about you. About us. Olivia's response was just as damning. I feel alive when I'm with you. Like everything else is just dull. I need you, Ethan. I couldn't read anymore. I closed the app, deleted my tracks, and slipped her phone back onto the nightstand. My chest felt like it was about to cave in. The betrayal wasn't just a suspicion anymore. It was a living, breathing monster that had sunk its claws into my marriage. I wanted to confront her right then and there. Wake her up and demand she explain herself. But I knew it wouldn't do any good. She'd lie, she'd deflect, she'd make me feel like I was the one overreacting. Olivia had always been good with words, quick on her feet when it came to arguments. No, I needed more than just texts. I needed to catch her red-handed. So, I went about my days pretending like everything was fine. I played the part of the oblivious husband, kissed her good morning, acted interested in her day. Meanwhile, I was planning. I bought a couple of cheap cameras and voice recorders online, discreet enough to hide around the house without her noticing. One in the living room, one in the bedroom, one in her car. I set them all up while she was out running errands, my hands shaking the entire time. The following days felt like being trapped in a slow-motion train wreck. I'd catch Olivia texting on her phone, smiling at her screen like a teenager with a crush. She'd leave the house at odd hours, making flimsy excuses about running to the store or meeting a friend for coffee. All the while, I pretended to believe her. I nodded, smiled, kissed her goodbye. But at night, when she was asleep, I'd review the footage. I'd listen to the recordings. I was hunting ghosts, but the ghosts were real. A week into my surveillance, I caught a conversation between Olivia and Ethan over the phone. The recorder I'd stashed in her car picked up the whole thing. I hate lying to him, Olivia said, her voice strained. But I can't stop. I don't want to stop. You don't have to, Ethan replied, his tone so calm it made my stomach churn. He'll never find out. And even if he does, what's he going to do about it? I don't know, Olivia said. Sometimes I think he suspects something. He's too trusting, Ethan scoffed. He wants to believe the best in you. That's his problem. It was like listening to them twist a knife in my gut, over and over. Any lingering doubt I'd have shattered. They were both playing me, taking advantage of the fact that I loved them. Trusted them. The next day, I sat down and started making a plan. If they wanted to treat me like a fool, I'd make sure it was the biggest mistake of their lives. 3-part. I stopped feeling like myself. I became something else entirely, a creature fueled by pain, anger, and the need to unearth every sickening detail of their betrayal. It wasn't enough to know that they were sleeping together. I had to understand how deep the knife had sunk. The cameras did their job. I caught them more than once. Ethan would stop by the house while I was at work. Sometimes for 10 minutes, sometimes for hours. The footage would make me sick to my stomach. The way she laughed at his jokes, touched his arm, her head thrown back in pleasure. They looked so damn comfortable. And Ethan? The man who once called me his brother would waltz into my home like he owned the place. No guilt, no hesitation. It was like he enjoyed the thrill of the secrecy. Maybe he thought he'd never get caught. Maybe he was right, if I'd been the trusting fool I used to be. One afternoon, I decided to follow Olivia. She'd left the house around lunchtime, saying she was meeting an old friend she hadn't seen in years. I tailed her from a distance, my heart pounding in my chest, my fist clenched tight around the steering wheel. She didn't meet a friend. She met Ethan. They went to some dive bar on the edge of town. The kind of place where nobody asks questions. I parked far enough away that they wouldn't spot me, but close enough to see them through the bar's grimy windows. They laughed, flirted, leaned into each other like teenagers sneaking a make-out session behind the bleachers. I took pictures with my phone, my hand trembling so bad half of them came out blurry. But I got enough. Enough to know this wasn't just some one-night stand or moment of weakness. This was a relationship. A twisted, deceitful relationship. I drove home, my knuckles white against the steering wheel, my mind racing with thoughts of revenge. I wanted to confront them right there in the bar, tear them apart with words or fists. I didn't care which. But I held back. I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of seeing me unravel. Instead, I started preparing, gathering evidence, storing photos, videos, recordings. All of it. I made sure every piece of damning proof was backed up in multiple places, locked away where only I could access them. Days blurred together. I barely slept, barely ate. I felt like a man possessed. But the more I uncovered, the more I realized how calculated their betrayal was. Ethan had been sneaking around my life like a parasite, feeding off my trust. Olivia had been lying to my face every day, pretending like we were fine, pretending like she still loved me. I scoured through her phone every chance I got, going deeper and deeper into the sickening rabbit hole. Messages about how she missed Ethan when he wasn't around. Plans for their next rendezvous. Discussions about me, laughing at my ignorance. He's clueless, Ethan had texted her. Too focused on his little construction business to even notice what's right under his nose. I almost feel bad, Olivia replied. But he's so distant now. Like he's more married to his work than to me. It's just different with you. Their conversations made me sick. Their excuses for what they were doing made me want to scream. But I stayed quiet. I stayed patient. Because I had a plan. My anger became a fire, burning away whatever love I'd once had for Olivia. I couldn't even look at her without feeling disgusted. She'd kiss me goodbye before work, say, "I love you," and I'd force myself to smile, force myself to lie right back. The final straw came when I found messages about them planning to meet up while I was supposed to be out of town for a business trip. I pretended to leave, even went so far as to have a friend pick me up from the house so Olivia would see me leaving. Then I waited, camped out in my truck down the street, phone in hand, watching the live feed from the cameras I'd set up. Sure enough, Ethan showed up. He walked right into my house like he belonged there, like he was coming home. I watched them, my fists clenched so tightly my knuckles popped. Every kiss, every embrace, every whispered word of affection felt like another nail in the coffin of our marriage. They weren't even trying to hide it anymore. They thought they'd won, that I was too blind or too stupid to figure out what was happening right under my nose. But I wasn't stupid, and I sure as hell wasn't blind. Not anymore. As I sat there in my truck, watching them desecrate everything I'd built, I made a promise to myself. They weren't going to get away with this. Not Olivia. Not Ethan. They'd broken me. Now it was my turn to break them. Part 4. I spent the next few weeks sharpening my revenge like a blade. Every smile I forced, every kiss I returned, every "I love you" I mimicked back to Olivia was just another stroke of the whetstone. I had learned enough from their messages, their meetups, their whispered promises. It was time to make them pay. First, I saw a lawyer. A bulldog of a man named Richard Kane who had the kind of reputation that made divorce attorneys flinch. I laid it all out for him. The recordings, the photos, the messages. Every bit of sickening evidence I'd collected like a madman. His eyes gleamed as he shuffled through the documents, his fingers tapping the desk like a pianist preparing for a symphony. "You've built quite the case," Kane said, his voice cool and professional. "Given what you've gathered, we can hit her where it hurts. Financially, reputationally. And if you're willing to go scorched earth, I can guide you every step of the way." "Scorched earth sounds good," I replied, my voice like gravel. "They didn't show me mercy. Why should I show them any?" Kane nodded. "First, we'll handle the financials. You need to secure your assets. Anything joint, we'll start separating. Bank accounts, investments, property. You own your business outright, which works in your favor. But we'll make sure there's no way she can claim a share of it." I followed his instructions to the letter. Transferring funds, setting up new accounts under my name only, creating a legal firewall around my business. If Olivia thought she'd walk away with half of everything I'd built, she was in for a brutal awakening. The legal side was only part of the plan. I wanted them exposed. I wanted everyone to know what they'd done. Social media was my weapon of choice. I created a private blog, detailing everything. Their texts, their phone calls, the dates they'd snuck off to spend together. I left nothing out. Pictures of Ethan sneaking into my house. Recordings of their filthy conversations. The entire ugly truth laid out for anyone who cared to read. I shared the link with everyone who mattered. Friends, family, coworkers. Olivia's parents. Ethan's buddies. I wasn't going to let them control the narrative. If they wanted to play dirty, I was ready to dive into the mud with them. The fallout was immediate. Friends calling me, disgusted by what they read. Family members texting me with words of sympathy and outrage. Olivia's parents were mortified. Her father left me a voicemail, apologizing for what his disgraceful daughter had done. Ethan didn't take it well, either. He called me, his voice shaking with rage. "What the hell are you doing?" he snarled. "You think blasting this all over the internet is going to fix anything?" "It's not about fixing anything," I shot back. "It's about making sure everyone knows exactly what kind of lying piece of shit you are." He hung up on me, but I wasn't done. At work, I made sure everyone knew why Ethan wouldn't be around to pick up shifts anymore. I called his boss, forwarded him the blog, let him know the kind of man he had on his payroll. Ethan lost his job within a week. Apparently, his employer didn't appreciate having someone so lacking in morals representing their company. Olivia tried to keep her job, but word spread fast. Clients stopped calling. Her reputation as a trustworthy, reliable designer was shredded. The lawsuits came next. Kane filed for divorce on my behalf, citing infidelity and seeking full custody of Lily. We made it clear Olivia wasn't fit to be a parent, not with the kind of reckless behavior she'd been engaging in. Kane assured me that the evidence I'd gathered would make that point clear enough to the court. Olivia begged me to drop the lawsuit. She cried, pleaded, promised that it had all been a mistake, that she loved me, that she wanted to work things out. The sheer nerve of it almost made me laugh. "You don't get to cry now," I told her, my voice colder than ice. "You made your bed. You and Ethan both. Now you can rot in it." She tried to turn our friends against me, but it was too late. The blog had done its damage. Her attempts to paint herself as the victim only made her look more pathetic. Ethan didn't fare much better. His so-called friends dropped him like a diseased rat. When the divorce proceedings started, Kane tore her apart. Every lie, every deception, every act of betrayal was laid out for the court to see. By the time Kane was done, Olivia looked like a ghost. Financially, I walked away with everything. The house, the business, my savings. Olivia was left with nothing but the shame she'd earned. But it wasn't over. I still had one last move to make. A final nail in their coffin. And I intended to hammer it in with everything I had. Part 5. When the divorce was finalized, I walked out of that courthouse feeling like I'd just crawled out of a grave. But the vengeance wasn't over. Not yet. I had one last card to play. One last blow to deliver. I found Ethan slumming it at some cheap bar downtown, where all the rejects end up when their lives crumble. He was hunched over a drink, his shoulders sagging, hair greasy and unkempt. The man who used to stride through life with effortless charm now looked like he was held together by liquor and spite. "Didn't expect to see you here," I said, sliding onto the stool next to him. He glanced at me, eyes bloodshot and hollow. "What the hell do you want? Haven't you done enough?" I smiled. A genuine, cold smile. "Not quite. You see, I figured I owed you something. A proper goodbye." "Just leave me alone," he muttered. "You ruined everything. Olivia's gone. My job's gone. I've got nothing." "You deserve nothing," I replied. "Every bit of suffering you're feeling now, you earned it." I let the words sink in, watched his shoulders slump even further. "And I hope it eats you alive." Leaving Ethan there, drowning in his misery, felt like closing a chapter. But Olivia wasn't done trying to claw her way back. Messages, voicemails, pathetic attempts to mend what she shattered. I ignored them all. She begged me to meet her once, claimed she was desperate to apologize. Against my better judgment, I agreed. We met at a cafe, her eyes red-rimmed and pleading. "I'm sorry," she choked out. "I was stupid. I ruined everything. Can't we just—" "No," I cut her off. "You can't unring a bell, Olivia. You made your choices. Now live with them." She sobbed, but her tears meant nothing to me. I left her there, broken, the same way she left me. But the difference was, I was already healing. The only thing left to do was rebuild. I poured myself into my business, worked harder than I ever had before. The distraction helped. So did Lily. She was the only pure thing left in my life. Ethan fled town soon after. Olivia bounced between her parents' house and cheap apartments. Her reputation was ruined. I thrived. Months later, I heard Ethan had tried to rebuild his life. New job, new town. But his past followed him. His name was dirt. Olivia wasn't much better. I heard she tried to rekindle old friendships, only to be met with scorn. I didn't care. I kept pushing forward. I built my business up from the ashes they tried to leave me in. I expanded. I succeeded. And I made damn sure everyone knew the truth about who they were and what they did. Lily was my focus. She was all that mattered. I devoted every bit of myself to her. School events, dance recitals, weekends spent just the two of us. I wanted her to know that she would always come first. I forced myself to move on, not just from Olivia and Ethan, but from the rage and bitterness they'd left festering inside me. I dated again, cautiously, never letting anyone close enough to hurt me. But over time, the scars began to heal. One night, sitting on the back porch with a glass of whiskey in my hand, I realized something. The rage that had driven me, that had kept me going through all of this, it was gone. I had burned it all away. I'd won. I'd torn them apart. And I didn't regret it. But revenge only lasts so long. After a while, you have to figure out what comes next. For me, it was Lily. It was building a future that had nothing to do with them. A future where their betrayal was nothing more than a scar, a memory that couldn't hurt me anymore. I built that future one day at a time. And as the months turned into years, the pain dulled. The anger faded. What remained was a man who had walked through hell and come out the other side. Not whole, not perfect, but stronger. The bitterness was gone, replaced by a calm acceptance. I had been forged by their betrayal, molded into something harder, sharper. And I would never allow anyone to hurt me that way again. Ethan and Olivia had become ghosts in my life, irrelevant shadows that held no power over me. I had buried them both in the rubble of their own making. From the ashes, I rebuilt my world. I kept thriving and rising while they kept sinking. And I walked away from the wreckage without looking back. The end.